Hey folks, Matt Kluskowski here, and we're going to take a look at one of those start to finish before and after videos here where we just basically, pull back the curtains. I'll show you my original raw photo. As you can see here, no settings change, and I'll do everything that I do to it, and you get to see the whole thing unfold. So, raw photo shot at a place called Second Beach on the coast in Washington State. Olympic National Park near that area, and shot at sunset. So one of the problems we have is bright sky, darker foreground, and we're going to come across that a lot. Moving the exposure doesn't help too much because if we go too bright, we blow out the sky. If we go too dark, to get the sky good, we make the foreground really dark. I'll make it a little bit brighter here. And then we come over here to highlights and shadows. That's really the star of what I'm going to do in Camera Raw, which, by the way, all this stuff in Camera Raw, same exact stuff as inside of Lightroom. So if you got Lightroom, it'll work exactly the same. But I would pull back on my highlights here, just like that. I'm not going to pull back too much, but we'll pull back a little bit more there. And then we're going to go up to shadows. I'm going to open up those shadows. I need to get some more detail over here into the foreground area. And then whites and blacks, my formula is Option click on Mac, Alt click on PC on the white slider, drag it to the right, and you'll start to see these little specks. It means you got a white point. You don't want to go crazy, but just make sure you got a little white point there. Same thing, click on the Option or Alt click on blacks, you see these little specks, and drag that to the left until you see them. All right, clarity is going to help because it's going to give a little bit of a detail and contrast to everything here. Vibrance and saturation, I go with saturation because it's not a portrait. If it were a portrait, saturation would be bad because it oversaturates everything. But in our case here, I think it helps out a lot. We'll come up here to white balance. I'll probably warm the whole photo, maybe just a little bit of magenta color there. If you click on the preview, you'll see that's our before and that's our after. So it helps out quite a bit. If we ever want to make the sky darker, we could go to the graduated filter here. We could bring the exposure negative, okay, and maybe even the highlights negative a little bit, and I could drag down, and that's going to darken that sky too without using too much of that highlight slider that we used back over here inside of the basic panel. So I could hold back on that because sometimes it does introduce a little bit of haloing up there, and you got to be careful with it. So that's why we can come over here to that graduated filter. We can pull back. If it starts to darken too much up here, open up the shadows. All right, take a look at what happens here. I'll bring it up a little bit. Let's just pull it down. But you can see here, I can open up the shadows so I can darken the sky with exposure, but then I can open up the shadows and so it doesn't darken too much of the tops of these trees up here on the top of that hill. All right, so I think we're looking pretty good. If I were to finish this off inside of Camera Raw, what I would do is add a little bit of an edge vignette to it. You can see that's before and that's after. Just kind of darkens the edges a little bit. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to increase my exposure just a hair and maybe check back on those whites. That still looks good. Okay, so at this point, we're done inside of Camera Raw. So what I want to do now is click Open Image. We're going to jump over into Photoshop. And we're just do a couple things to finish this off, things that really wouldn't be very possible inside of Camera Raw. The first thing I do here is I press J. I grab the spot healing brush. See these little spots? I'd get rid of as many of them as I can. Okay, you can be really particular here, especially up in the sky. I would be, but what I'm always thinking about is if I'm printing the photo. And if I'm printing the photo, when you start to see this a little bit larger on a wall, all these little things, these little clumps of seaweed that are on the beach here, they're going to look like spots, like little dust spots on the photo. And because people aren't going to know that. So I usually try to get rid of that stuff. Not that I'm just trying to kill nature here. It's just they're going to just look like dust spots and people aren't really going to know. So I'd rather just get rid of any of those little spots that could be mistaken for maybe specks on the picture frame or something like that. So we'll get rid of them. I'm always looking at the outside edges. Again, I'm thinking of this printed maybe with a white mat around it. We want to make sure we don't have this anything white inside of it. So we're going to get rid of that too, because that's going to go up against a white mat and it's going to look distracting. So we'll get rid of that in a second, but I would probably get rid of this clump here. Spot healing brush does great with these things because it's a really good quick way. You don't have to sample or anything, and you can go as much or as little. I mean, it's really how much patience do you have. You know, you could go on and on forever And but we will stop because I'm sure you're about over it. All right, so we got that taken care of. Notice I cut these trees off at the top. I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. Press the letter S to get to my clone stamp tool. And just make sure I reset my settings back to normal here. And what we're going to do here is I'm just going to Option or Alt click. This time you do have to sample. So I'm going to Option or Alt click to sample and then just paint. Okay, just little by little, just to trim the top of that tree down. Okay, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll grab a piece of the tree, maybe even a piece of another tree, and I'll kind of even build it right back on top. So that way it kind of does put a little bit of a top to the tree. It's not this cut off tree on the top of a mountain here. It doesn't look like it was just chopped down. Same thing over here. I'll probably try to reshape this one a little bit just to get it so you don't have that tension of having a tree right at the top of your frame that's just totally cut off. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And again, you can Option or Alt click and you can kind of sample and paint a couple little edges right onto the top of the tree, and that way it doesn't look like it was you totally just cloned it out, which of course we did, but you don't really want it to look that way. And I'll even shape it a little bit to try to take some of those edges off. Okay, same thing over here. Option or Alt click to sample and paint. I want to get rid of this hole. All right, you'll find this a lot, especially with outdoor photos. You got to get rid of all those little holes in the sky if they go up to the edge of your photo, because they get really distracting, and you'll find that you can't stare at anything else when it's up printed big on the wall. It tends to just merge right into whatever is around it, so not a good thing. All right, looking pretty good. We're going to go Command, Option, Shift, and the letter E on a PC that's Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. And what that does is it brings everything onto one layer, still leaves your other layers below. In fact, you can see if I turn it on and off, you can see all that stuff is still up there, but it puts everything else onto its own layer here. And what I would do here is just press the letter O. We get our dodge and burn tools here. So I go to my dodge tool. Is there anything I want to make brighter? Probably maybe the rock. Bring our exposure down a little bit, about 25%. So make some of these areas up front a little brighter, back here. And then we go over here to our burn tool. We use a right bracket key, get a really big brush. Again, about 20%. And burn in some of the top, burn in some of the areas on the beach here. Some of the corners, just to darken some of that a little bit here. Not a huge change. That's before and after. And then finally, we can go to Filter, go down here to Sharpen, go to Unsharp Mask. We'll zoom in. I always look at whatever's close in the image when I adjust sharpness here. So I can get pretty aggressive with this. I can go all the way up to 200. I took this with a D800, so it's a 36 megapixel file. So I can sharpen it quite a bit. I always leave radius at 1.4, but we can crank that up to 200. If you're shooting with like a 24 megapixel camera, maybe take it down to 150 or so. I mean, heck, we can probably even go a little bit higher here. There we go. And click OK. And I back off here. So we can see our image. And what I'll do is, let's go back here. I'm going to open this up really quick. And I'm going to reset all my Camera Raw defaults here. Click on Open Image. And let's just take a look at our before and after. I'll just overlay the two on top of each other and you can see it here. So take a look. That's our before image. That's our after image. So we got before and after. And everything was done between Camera Raw and a few layers right here inside of Photoshop. All right, folks, thanks for watching. My name is Matt Kloskowski, and I'll talk to you again soon.